Yeah, I think so. That's maybe because Damon didn't... I think Damon was more controlled. I think the control on the record was higher, really. He wasn't putting loads of mindless keyboards everywhere and covering me up, basically, and singing over everything like he usually does. He was leaving some gaps so you could hear what I was doing. I mean that in the nicest possible way. But you know what I mean? I think everything I did was pretty strong. I had pretty strong ideas. That's the thing. If you come up with this, it's the kind of a battle who's got the strongest idea, and whoever's got the strongest idea about certain sections, so they become prominent in those sections, I guess. I wouldn't say that, really. I don't think the whole record sounds like that because I haven't really been listening to hardcore or anything. I've been listening to a little bit of lots of things, really. I mean, expanding my horizons. That hasn't taken the form of something that Damon would originally have thought of as tuneless noise. I kind of object to anything I listen to as being tuneless noise because it's not, and it means I'm pretty thick, really, or have limited concentration, which I have, but it means, in a good way, I think I've got limited attention span, I guess. Yeah, I do, really. Especially with, like, as we're not making records or songs that are like quarter of an hour long. And that anticipation of something exciting happening in, say, 5 minutes. So, yeah, I like... I've just been listening to things that are quite short and exciting, or long and exciting. But it's not all been like hardcore. I don't know. I mean, that's such a general thing. I mean, it doesn't... Hardcore means dance music in England, but the kind of hardcore maybe that I've been accused of listening is only things like Fugazi, you know, which is it's pretty tuneful as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, well, I don't think really as a band we were really listening to the Kinks very much. I think Damon probably did, but I haven't listened to the Kinks for ages. Since, I don't know, I think I've only got one greatest hits and that's it, and the Kinks have never really excited me beyond what they're supposed to have done, like 2.5 minutes of energy, but I mean after that I think it's a bit dull, really. Yeah, probably. I was in far mellower mood in The Great Escape, maybe. Far more into maybe atmospheres rather than in your face. It's difficult, really. It's really difficult to say why I'm prominent on this record and not the other one. I think I was determined to be prominent on this record, really. I think I really wanted to... I wasn't scared of annoying Stephen, basically, by going on and on and on about dirty guitar sounds or dirty guitar sounds being higher in the mix. So I think that had a lot to do with it. I think because I'm a lot clearer in my head, I'm more attracted to extremes rather than just something that is acceptable. Yeah, I thought we had to repot Blur if it was like a plant, you know. So I basically was tired of being involved with comedy records, which was what a lot of it was becoming. I took offence when certain people said it was like Chaz and Dave, but I can see that point of view, and I think it was kind of becoming a bit of a... It was caricaturing us a little too much, and I thought that the emotional content in music and anger in music and sadness in music, all the proper emotions is important, you know. Records are always great records when they have one or two of those in there. No, I find it very difficult to... It's not really a soundbite record, is it, really? I mean, I'm not a big fan of those, really, because they're not very subtle. But it's... I know people have been saying it's heavier, and there's been like... There's trip-hop in there, and it's like, well, there isn't really trip-hop. I think we are sort of... We always play with musical genres. Perhaps that's been one of our problems. Yeah, I think definitely. It's definitely like the distilled spirit of Blur. There's a quote then, the distilled spirit of Blur. No, it wasn't really, because when Damon sang me the songs on acoustic like he normally does, there was the same kind of melancholy songs, and I thought, oh, you know, blue jeansy type. And then we heard some of his little home demos, and he was obviously gone off his head a little bit more, and was being a lot cruder, which I was pleased about, because everything was getting... I don't like cleanliness too much in records, unless it's Talk or someone like that, when it's... That's the whole point of it, you know. No, not really, but I don't think we're a particularly British band anymore, really. We've been too many places to be that sort of limited, and we were. It was a guilty thing, really, just ignoring the rest of the world, even though we were touring and stuff. It was just a huge homesickness, I guess. But I can't listen to English music. I think I'm in a kind of mid-pop life crisis, because pop makes me very sick. I can't really pin it down to just like American. I've been listening to like soul, hip hop, and what people may term as punk, but it's kind of... I've been still listening to English things. They've just been like unobvious 80s bands, you know. Bands that probably everyone might know about if Dave Bowie hadn't have screwed the whole of that decade up by putting out Let's Dance. No, because I don't think of myself as one. Yeah, I guess so. But that seems very... Like the Seaside tour and things we did. It was like a lot of early teenage people. And I couldn't take it seriously. It was nice, but, you know, it didn't seem real. It didn't seem like... It was like, this is going to blow over. You know, it's just ridiculous. And I don't wish I had enjoyed it more or anything like that, because it frightened me, actually, in a way. They're very impressionable people, and I don't particularly want the responsibility of being looked up to by them people. I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I think it's good for young people to be frightened by music. I was. Getting my tiny mind around things like Strawberry Fields Forever was pretty frightening when I was 6, whatever, so... And I suppose Patti Smith records frightened me when I was in my teenage, and, you know, so it's good to be frightened. Yeah, I think we wanted to I think limitations are a good thing. And although keyboards now, you can play any instrument in the planet, but yeah, there's only one song with strings. So we wanted to keep it like, if there was going to be any big sounds, it wasn't going to be strings or brass, it would be like a Hammond or a guitar or something, or a bass or a theremin, which we've got on the record, which I played. And we just sort of, it's good having a go at new instruments because your limitations, you know, the whole thing of something good coming out of incompetence, I like. I don't know. I don't know. I've thought about this, and I can't see it. I can't see myself rocking out, but then I'm not on stage. I look at a lot of things I do on stage, and I can't believe that I've done them. Well, I've always. I mean, I always was. But then we helped ourselves out with, you know, things that we had to have live because the song wouldn't mean much without them because of records, like brass and extra keyboard player and stuff. But we're still going to use them, but they're not used on the new songs. But I like that idea. I like the idea that I don't need a rhythm guitar player, and because I like people like Rocco Johnson and Pete Townsend and people like that who kept it all very much. Not a control freak, I like having that responsibility. That's a responsibility I enjoy. I like Countryside Ballad Man because I sort of, you know, enjoy a bit of very crude kind of, I don't know, it's like One Foot in the Grave, that Beck album. I enjoy listening to that, and perhaps I'm getting old, but I do like those slide steel guitars and things. I like Essex Dogs, you know, because I don't listen to that very often, because every time it comes up when I'm listening to the album, I go, oh, I can't put myself through that, because it's quite heavy listening. That's quite frightening in places, and it's not that I don't like it, that I don't listen to it, it's just that I don't want to get involved with it sometimes. It's not the kind of song I can happily make a cup of tea afterwards, really. Don't know what else other ones I like. I like all, I don't know. I like Look Inside America, actually, because it's got a harp in it, and I think that really is the best typical Blur sort of song we've done ever. You know, that kind of does link that record with the others. But I think as that side of Blur, that it really is the best of that type of Blur song. It's very successful in that way.
It feels like coming home. It's good. It's kind of, I think the music we're making now is the music we always wanted to make, but got distracted from in a way by various things. I think you have to wait 5 hours before you can actually do what you want to do anyway. Yeah, I mean you have to have had enough time, I think, so for people to trust you. You know, people who've got a financial stake in you, because it's very hard for people to. People very often try and persuade you to go down the road that they know and that's well understood. No, things we don't really work in that way. I think we'd really just gone as far as we could down that particular direction, and everybody just knew it was time for a change and time to take a few more steps sideways rather than perpetually taking steps forward. But we never really had a meeting and sat down and point one on the agenda, the new direction or anything. These things, I think 90% of the time in a band you have to do you constantly have to do the next most urgent thing on a list of a million things to do. And they're all things that are screaming out obvious rather than things that you have to take conscious decisions about. I was just trying to think when I did realise it was going to sound the way that it was. I mean, it was quite... We recorded it, even though in actual studio time it was quite quick. It was over a reasonable period of time, because we had a month break in between when we actually had a holiday. And which is amazing. It's just the first time we'd been apart from each other for more than 3 weeks in 7 years. Which is like... And by the end of 3 weeks, you're going, hang on, there's this big chunk missing. What is it? Oh, yes, those other 3. But that's quite nice. But when you're making a record and you're so closely involved with it, it needs effort to make it sound a certain way. So that the premise of the question that, it just kind of... We ended up with this album, and I was pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised. It did took a lot of pushing for it to get it to sound like that. So, but I was very pleased with the way that with the quality of especially the quality of the sounds. So we spent a lot longer this time on actually thinking about sound rather than polishing arrangements and going back and tweaking things so they're exactly in time and that kind of stuff. We concentrated a lot more on the sonic quality of everything. I think a lot of this album is a first person thing, especially the lyrics are a lot more written in the first person. Damon's singing more about himself, how he feels about things. And I think the same is true in another way for all the other instruments. And everything about it, which it sounds kind of crap to say that, because of all these stupid cliches about, we make music for ourselves, nobody else likes it, it's a bonus, which is bollocks, because you can't make music under those conditions, you just can't. But it's quite a brave thing to do that, I think, because to go from the third person to the first person. Because you're laying yourself open. Any criticism then that's levelled at the music or what you do is levelled at you personally. I think all the records have been honest, but they've all been honest about different things. The record is honest about us. It's very relaxed, especially compared to the last record, which was made... really in the glare of the spotlights, because at the time we were in the studio recording it, the part life had just gone mental, and suddenly there were groups of journalists, all the groups of photographers that would stand in huddles around London were standing there for us then. So every time when you get used to leaving a restaurant and there'd be a group of paparazzi standing around there, and they go, who's that? I don't know. And then we were leaving the restaurant, and they all go, no, give us a smile. But so that was that. I mean, really, even at the time, I think we were all saying, it's amazing how little pressure there is. It's inevitable that the pressure was just piled on us, And so by comparison, this record was a breeze to do. And plus, our heads were all a lot more sorted on this, on this album. Everyone would arrive at the studio kind of fresh and ready to do work on some days. No, everybody, I think, was a lot more focused on the record. Everybody enjoyed the recording a lot more. Again, it goes back to honesty, I think. The mood of this record really reflects how we were feeling when we made it. What that is, I haven't a clue. It's difficult to distill those things into little sound bites, I think. But, what can I say? It is an honest record in all those respects. It was done in a few hours in this studio. Can you have a little pan around? We've just built this place, I suppose, a month and a half ago, something like that. And that was its inaugural track, its christening track. Well, we did it pretty much as usual. Damon had a song idea in some in some state of readiness or other, and we kind of sat down and thrashed it out, turned it into a Blur song. It's I think the most interesting music is tends to be made under some kind of crippling conditions, and the crippling conditions to this one were nobody really knew how the equipment worked. Got a whole room full of boxes in there that all plugged into each other, and it was a bit of an experimental day, really, trying to fit everything together and plug it in right and make it all work. But those things only add to the creative juices of the whole day, I think. No, I think I'm sure people, if anyone buys this record hoping to get another, jingly jangly English stomp along, then they'll be disappointed. But I think really that our fans expect more from us than that. I think that more people would be disappointed if we carried on remaking Park Life ad nauseum. Touring was really the main impetus, I think, that for a lot of the way this record sounds, because in the past we've been guilty to some extent of treating the two things very much as separate, and which I don't think there's anything wrong with, but because so much more is possible in the studio than is possible live. But again, went back to what I said before about having the live experience is more interesting because you are constrained by all those things. You're constrained by, you can only have one, the most basic level, you can only have one drum kit and one set of sounds out of it. And so to make, 25 songs sound different with that same instrument is, takes some application and makes the end result more interesting. So, but anyway, so we thought we were trying to take some of that back and put it into the studio work. And so I think this record is going to... People won't be able to say anymore, oh, they sound completely different live, because I think with this record we've tried to take a lot of what made us sound completely different live and feed it back into the record. I did, yeah. I took an airline pilot with me, though. Not being completely mad. No, I've got a friend who flies jets, so if I'm doing anything where I actually have to arrive, I usually take him along. If I'm doing something where it doesn't matter if I land in a field, I don't bother.
I don't know, I didn't really think about it very much. I got back from a weekend in New York and went to a studio and just got on with it, really. Don't know, I think it was Damon's idea. I think, yeah. I'd kick up a stink if I wasn't. I think Damon's just a determined person. I just think he really had enough of being a sort of a very English person. That's sort of, whenever we go abroad, people say you're very English. And it's the arse end of Britpop. And I think we're all feeling quite cosmopolitan, I don't know. I just play the bass, it's the easiest job in the world. No, it's more Iggy Pop than Britpop. Apparently the sun shines most in June, but the hottest temperatures are in August. Even though you get less sunlight because it takes the atmosphere a while to warm up. And I don't think the sun's really shining on Britpop anymore, is it? I think it might be August in the Britpop year. Oh no, never. The rest of us don't really get it like Damon. It's easy for us. We haven't really got famous faces, I don't think. So it's easy for us to be anonymous if we want to be. But if Damon walks into a bar, everybody in that bar knows that Damon's in the bar within 2 minutes. Which kind of makes it different for him. But I like going to bars, so I'm quite happy. You can't really say that with a bass guitar, really. You can just join in. You know, you can't say I'm in different personal circumstances. You know, it's quite an organic thing. If there's a lot of anger in this record, isn't there? I'm not really an angry person. I'm more of a sort of contemplative, nose-picking person. I suppose you just sort of get carried along. See, the quieter your everyday life is. I mean, when we made the last album, it was in a kind of blaze of alcoholic, glitterati, shagging abandon. And I think we were all a lot quieter, probably, well, most of us, while we were making this record. And I think, so all those kind of deep-rooted, primal lusts and longings they don't really go away. You know, they're there inside all of us, and they probably tend to come out a bit more in the music. If you're having a quieter life, I don't know, that may be bullshit. Well, I do come from Bournemouth. I've been hanging out with the art lot, actually. I think they're probably the best people. They're not so preoccupied with themselves. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what separates an arty record from not an arty record. I mean, you could. I mean, Pavement, probably a good example of a band making ironic, arty music in a sort of deliberately non-arty way. I don't know. It's just a cool tag, isn't it? You know, I think Damon was concerned to make a visceral record, a record that really came from his heart, rather than singing about other people, singing about himself. And it's quite a bold thing to do, you know. And I think we all have trouble doing it in our lives, saying what we really think, because you don't know whether people are going to laugh at you or love you. You know, if you say what you think. You know, we all spend our lives pretending that we're normal. I think Damon was really. I mean, the going to Iceland thing. I think I'm sure he's probably told you he felt he found something there. I think he was looking for something, because it's walking into the realms of cliche whenever you talk about life as a pop star, because cliches are all that really exist about kind of altered kind of states like that. But I think there's so much demands on your time and your very being when you're in a situation like he's been in for the last couple of years. But I think just going to Iceland, I think he just found something inside himself there that he was willing to sing about. It's quite a brave thing to do, but there's no other way of really being properly fulfilled. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy just to play the bass. Well, they can listen to it quietly in the daytime. No, I think, you know, there are instant kind of obvious hit singles on this. But it's, you know, I mean, do you want popular culture to be entirely superficial? I mean, there's always been a depth to what we've done. I mean, this might be a darker depth rather than a kind of an ironic depth or something. But you know, you've got to confront those beasties. And I don't think there's any. You know, it's not like it's deliberately trying to be scary or anything. It's just it's emotional, and you know, emotions are nearly always, they're quite overwhelming, aren't they? That's why they're emotions. Yeah, I like Beetle Bum, On Your Own. I think we're all quite pleased with the Ballad Man song. It's just got a nice warmth to it. I can't really think of anything better to do than go around the world playing my guitar and showing off, being the centre of attention. So, yeah, hit the road.
Yeah, I suppose, but we've always been like that. You know, we kind of seem to manoeuvre ourselves into a position where everyone hates us, from really everybody loving us, and it's at that point that we're at our best. I think we sort of need that antagonism. I think so, yeah. But it has got a lot to do with that sense of rejection, you know, and when you feel like that, you feel like you've got nothing to lose, and you should just follow your heart, really. No, we had to do it. I mean, I don't think the band would have lasted if we hadn't have taken a big jump forward, because you know, we got to the point where we'd achieved most things that bands ever set out to achieve, and it was only really music that would motivate us. Well, I'd always wanted to be a pop person, but I didn't want to be. I never wanted to be a tabloid person. Well, that's not true. I was always quite interested in being a tabloid person, but when I actually got the opportunity to be one, it was appalling, really. You can't win against them. I thought you could play clever games with them, but you can't. Make the music a little bit difficult for them, you know. So it's protection, really. The record, it's entirely about that. You know, I think the Great Escape would have been more about those things, but we did it so closely to Part Life that we hadn't really had a chance to sort of sit down and work out what had happened to us. But this time, you know, everything had happened to us, and it didn't make us particularly great people. So that became the most important thing to get back our self-esteem, which is a funny thing, because you know, every time someone becomes famous, everyone assumes that they're having a wonderful time, and they are in parts, but the whole package is just, you know, the bad things outweigh the good things. So you just have to kind of pick out the bits that are really great about being famous and hold them to yourself, and, you know, get a life. It feels like a celebration of our personalities over, you know, the culture that we're in. You know, it does feel like we've become rebellious again. It does feel like we're starting out again in a weird way. Made us all feel a bit younger, I think. You know, at the venerable age of 28, I needed to feel a bit younger. It's hard to say. I think it's one of those records that you really can't predict what's going to happen. It has a quality about it which suggests that it might do very well in America, but you never know. It might be still too hermetic for them to get, really. I don't know. It's going to be interesting, whatever happens. I can't wait to see people's reactions. And I haven't felt like that for a long time. It's quite liberating to feel like that. Graham really got heavily into American music sort of as we finished Part Life, and there was a period when it, you know, musically, I don't think we were in the same place at all. And I just became sort of fed up with the whole British thing. It just something that had been, you know, we felt it was something we'd sort of worked out for ourselves, i.e. British culture was something that still had some vitality. It was just hijacked and just became what it is today, you know. And it's all the bad things about British culture are now prevalent, I think, in the sense that you know, there's just this point of British culture in you might as well say 1966, where we had the Beatles and we had the football team, and that's our culture now. It's still, we can't, and a bit of the war, you know, we've still got the war, but that's dying out. But those three things are what we're still proud of. I mean, not a great deal else, really, as a whole nation. And that wasn't really the point, really. But so I kind of got drawn towards what Graham was listening to, and then got into different parts of it myself, and started to. The most important thing, I started to understand the language they were using musically and lyrically. You know, before I'd found it very aggressive and very negative, but then I kind of started to see the funny side of it and the positive elements that were in even the most kind of sort of angst-ridden bands. And once I worked that out, I was really into it. You know, and I haven't listened to anything else really, especially people like Pavement and Beck. Beck especially, not so much for the music, just the attitude. You could hear that those records were made in a very relaxed way, and if something sounded right first off, they didn't try and change it, they just kept it like that. I mean, the only British bands that I suppose have worked like that recently are bands like The Fall. I mean, not latter day Fall, but early Fall are like that. And you look at a lot of American bands, and they cite The Fall as a very important influence. But I think that's where we were when we started out. We had that attitude, we had that art school mentality, and we just wanted to make this more art school, back to our roots, really. I hope so. I think so. I mean, I think that's the only way you can make records of a time, is by completely cutting off from everybody else. In a way, if you try and make a record of its time, it doesn't work. You know, you have to be almost completely oblivious to the fact that you're in any decade. You know, I think really that the 21st century came about 2 years ago. In my thinking, dreading the millennium, I think it's going to be an absolute nightmare. Everybody's going to be contributing something and basically saying absolutely nothing about it. You know, it's going to be an enormous letdown. It's from third to first person. All of those sort of twisted ideas that I put into other people are now myself, but you can't kind of write about it in so much a flippant way when you're talking about yourself. So maybe the kind of darkness that I imagined in my head didn't translate with other characters because I was being, you know, more distant, but it's sort of very much me now. Totally. How I did my demos is how the vocals sound sometimes. Even words that didn't really make any sense I kept, because like Beetlebum, for example, when I did that, you know, Beetlebum, what on earth does that mean? And I was going to change it, but then I thought, no, I'm not going to change that. That's what I was thinking. And it means something to me, but it's not really. It probably means something to other people, you know. So I'm not putting the lyrics on the record, and I'm not really going to explain them because I feel that's appropriate. I think I wanted this to be more of a band record, yeah, and also sometimes like John Lennon could never listen to his voice unless it had been triple tracked. And that became John Lennon's voice. I think sometimes you need to mess around with your voice to be able to hear the song how it should be. I mean, I don't like the sound of my own voice. I don't think many singers do. And by mucking about with things, you can enjoy it more. Quite a lot of playing together and just going over riffs and just getting it until it felt really good. And and Graham contributing a lot more on this one than he did in the last record. But that's good in a way because it forced you to write in a certain way. You know, I can still do that, you know, and I probably will in another guise. I mean, I'm sort of starting to do a musical with some people at a small theatre, so that side of my personality can be satisfied, you know, doing kind of musical stuff there. And I just don't think it's appropriate for us, and I think the rest of the band are happier when it's not like that. You know, it's just something that I'm personally really in love with. I don't think the rest of the band share that love with me. So, you know, this is something where it's all of us together, as opposed to kind of a dominant character saying this is how we're doing it. It definitely feels like that's what we are at the moment. I mean, I don't know. This might satisfy and after we've taught it, it might satisfy that need in us, and we might go and do something that's incredibly clean and electronic. I don't know. It's unlikely, but, you know, you just have to prove things to yourself all the time, I think. That's the main thing with music. I'm uneasy in that middle ground where everyone likes you. You know, I've been there. I know what it's like, and it's confusing when you're playing. It actually really does your head in when you're playing to 30,000, 40,000 people, and they all absolutely love it. But they love it because it's popular, and that's not being elitist about it. It's just personally, I was confused by that state of mind. The entertainer in me loved it, but the artist in me was confused about it. Well, I just found something there which I was searching for. I don't know, really. I just feel incredibly happy and peaceful when I'm there. I can't really say any more about it, you know. That's what it does for me. I think it's good that we put the anger into the record and not into our personal relationship with each other, which is where it was. So I'm pleased about that. No, I mean, that was a weird time because, you know, we were playing to 35,000 people, and yet if you read the English press, then, you know, it was nothing. So, I mean, it was kind of backs against the wall and fuck you all, you know. We know what we're doing and don't give a shit what you think. And I like that sometimes. It's good. It draws you together. You have to be, you know. Well, I was actually in Iceland at the time. I'd just flown over just to do the gig. So I was even more detached from everything than normal. And we were recording out there and just done a few things which I thought were really good. Up there was I started doing the vocals, and I was only working for like 3 hours a day. Actually, the rest of the time I was out enjoying myself. But those 3 hours were, you know, I knew how I felt. It wasn't it, and it's a lot easier when you're singing about yourself to know how you feel about the song. In a way, that's why there's lots of different kinds of sounding voices, because it's different ways that I feel about myself. Yeah, I think when we were at the end of when we did the last European tour, some of the TV programs we were doing in Italy, you know, which were so pop, miming our own songs, and it was a laugh because, you know, it's a nice country and then lovely people, but it just, you know, it just felt silly. You know, we were grown-up men and we were acting like boys, and no disrespect to them, but, you know, which is ludicrous for us, knowing if anyone who knew where we came from, you know, to have gone from Modern Life is Rubbish to being pin-ups. Confusing. Grand failure in America, really, but sort of it's, you know, it's quite positive. I just got to know a lot of. I think another important thing was we toured with a band called The Rentals, and got to know Matt, and that was the first American that I kind of had become a best mate, and spent 3 months with him just touring around Europe. And I sort of saw Americans in a different way from that point onwards, and then other people have sort of popped in just randomly, like Steve Malkmus, and you know, talking to him, and both him playing his record and me playing what we'd done of our record, and just getting it was a different sort of set of people that were starting to talk about music with, and Graham sort of knew Sonic Youth a little bit, and we sent Essex Dogs off to Thurston Moore to do, and he did something really strange with it, even more strange than it is, and just the whole thing, it felt a lot more natural than hanging out with Pulp in the West End.